haere mai, and welcome to Cultic, the podcast where we talk about coercion, control, and all things cultish. I'm Dr. Caroline Ansley. I'm a medical doctor. As a child, I lived at the Centrepoint community, a notorious cult in New Zealand, and now I run a website that advocates for the former children of the community.
I'm Liz Gregory, and I run the Gloriavale Leavers Support Trust, and I'm privileged to walk alongside people after leaving this group as they embark on their new lives.
And I'm Lindy Jacob. I'm a former member of the Exclusive Brethren, and I'm part of the Olive Leaf Network, a new initiative in Aotearoa to support leavers of high-demand religious groups.
Come with us as we unpack the cult playbook. We'll be talking to experts and leavers of coercively controlling groups, and we will call for Kiwis to cult-proof their lives.
Come with us as we traverse the cultiverse.
A warning, this podcast contains references to subjects and discussions which may be difficult for some people to hear. Please take care of yourselves and your whānau when listening. Welcome back to Cult Chat. We have got myself, Caroline, Kaz, Liz and Lindy here together in a second episode talking about the International Cultic Studies Association conference, which I attended in Montreal a week or so ago. We have already talked about it for an hour, and we had the wonderful Maria Esguerra with us, who's a psychologist from Australia. She was with me and we did some little video vlogs along the way, and we posted them on our Facebook and Instagram pages. So if you want to hear more about it, about specific events, that's what we have done. But Maria now unfortunately can't be with us for the second episode, and so we're just going to keep going for another one because we did not talk about very much in the first. So lovely to be back with you both, Liz and Lindy.
Great to be here. Hey, and I have a quick question. Are the talks at ICSA available afterwards? Like, can you purchase something so that you can view or listen to recorded content?
Oh, that's a good question. I think they might release a very small number free to air on YouTube, but mainly it's for people who have got, who paid for attendance at the conference. I do wonder if you could purchase after the fact. Online attendees do have access to all of them, and I know that I'll be able to see the ones I missed when they release them, so they're all recorded. So yeah, so that's a good question, but you can check it out yourselves. International Cultic Studies Association. I think it's I'd have to look it up, but that's easy to find anyway.
The website and have a look if any, because I'm just thinking, if any of our viewers or listeners want to dive into one of the talks that you discuss or mention, can they find that content? Right. Basically, we're saying head to the ICSA website and do some searching there, and you can, there's so many resources on their website. It is a phenomenal organization. And I myself can't wait to get to one of these conferences one year. Haven't been yet, but really looking forward to getting there one day.
Yeah. I've been on their website just this week looking for resources, and so they've got an incredible section, and then there's just pages of all their academic articles that have been printed in their they have a journal publication, and they're very easily readable, various people with PhDs and masters. I was particularly looking for articles around children in cults or children's education in cults, and I was just astounded by the breadth of their resource library. Very impressive.
Well, right now, one of the things they released at the conference right on the last day was the fact that they've had a overhaul of their website, because they've accumulated decades.
They must have,
decades, and it was getting harder and harder to find. So now they have got rebranding, and it does look way better, way better. It's moved into the 2020s, which is fabulous.
Wow.
So,
brilliant.
Yeah, so in our last chat, at the end we talked about cult apologists and harm to children in cults, and it really reminded me of a talk I went to by Jill Abbey Mitten. And there's a bit of a trigger warning here, guys, because the content is a little serious in this talk. Jill Abbey Mitten, I know that Linda, you know her. She's a PhD, former exclusive brethren or PBCC herself in the UK, and is connected to the University of Salford in Manchester, and has, I'm not sure how long it's been running, maybe a year, has been doing a research study which is not finished. She was releasing some preliminary data in two talks, and I only attended one, but the talk I attended was about child sex abuse in cults and what they're finding in terms of the numbers. And the reason I was like so drawn to this is it's a quantitative study, it's not qualitative. The numbers are high and they're not finished. So the numbers they've so far got from 150 groups internationally in 62 countries, 1,162 participants. That, and they're not finished. They're not finished. And they're all self-declared, born or raised in a cult, and then left. And they have, people were completing surveys, multiple surveys, lots and lots of surveys about different things, and they're using the data to draw out different things. And this one was a bit about risks of child abuse to people in cults. And I won't spend too long on it, but the number that immediately hit me in the face was 54.3% in the whole sample said they'd experienced child sexual abuse.
Wow.
Wow, indeed. Yes. Wow, indeedy. And I think, yeah, like I say, they did a whole lot of different scores on them to work out, and she went into great detail. She also said that in the sample, 59% met the criteria for PTSD and 76% met the criteria for complex PTSD.
Yes, that's not a surprise at all. Have they done analysis of that to distinguish between people who live in cult commune situations, living really closely to each other, versus those that are more out in society, a little bit more like your exclusive brethren or other sorts of groups?
I don't. Yeah, I can't answer that question.
No, because I would like to make a suggestion that there are opportunities for research projects on closed groups that have sort of confines around them that I think might make interesting research. It's not interesting, it's devastating research. And I'd like to propose that the rate is a lot higher for those kind of cultic groups. And I'm obviously thinking of what we know about the Gloriavale sphere, what the police have already released out to the public of how many potential victims they found, and when you did and perpetrators, and when you did your maths on it, it was an eye-popping number. That not everyone who's in a group currently will reveal abuse that's occurred to them, perhaps ever, or maybe only on leaving, and not everyone that's left a group at the time where a research project is underway feels confident to speak about it, and not everyone who's recently left a group is actually aware of what constitutes child sexual abuse either. So
it's likely to be higher as a result.
Absolutely.
She talked about the thing called the trauma coerced attachment scale, because she was wondering about if some groups create a greater attachment and trauma to them than others. And I wonder if there'd be an overlap with what you're just talking about there. And because she noticed a difference between, because the highest numbers of people in different groups she looked at that said the top three particular groups represented in their data were the Jehovah's Witness, the PBB, the Exclusive Brethren, Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, and the Mormons. And she said the numbers, when looking at breaking down that number, the child sexual abuse number, and things like how old were they, did they tell anyone, did they tell police, how long before they actually told someone, those sorts of breaking it down. She said they were quite different from the other two groups, and she wondered if the exclusive brethren are more traumatically attached to their group. And I wonder if it's
That's a fascinating concept. What did you call it? Coercive?
It's called the trauma coerced attachment scale.
Wow, I've never heard of that, but that sounds fascinating.
Yes, yes. And so I wonder if that's what you're just talking about there, Liz, that if you're more fused to the group,
Yeah.
more everything, it's more everything about the world you're in than a group that has more access to another world, another group of people, another kind of ideas.
Yeah.
There's more influence outside the group.
You'd
And
think so. I mean, that sounds extremely plausible. Yeah.
yeah,
Your
so
statistics, I mean, they're ringing a bell in my head. Even recently in Gloriavale, adults, parents have been heard to say, oh, well, this happens out in the world as well. This
Yes,
stuff happens
exactly.
everywhere. And
Yeah.
I just shake my head like, yeah. And actually someone said to someone in there, yeah, and what they do is most people out here would pack their bags, pack up and get on out of there. Like after suffering abuse out here, there would normally be a response of protection, not, oh, it happens everywhere, and so I'm going to stay here and like potentially continue putting my children at risk. Very cultic response. Oh, it happens everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and in the same light, another talk I went to, which I found really interesting, it was about men abused in coercively controlling environments. And this is a hard one for me to talk about because first of all, I'm not a man, and we have 80% of our listeners, according to Facebook, are women, and there are far more women's voices in this space. And that is, I think, because women are disproportionately harmed in high control groups and disproportionately experience sexual harm generally in society. So that's known and on the table. However, there's something about men's voices not coming coming to the fore in that context. And there's also some myths out there about masculinity and the male experience and whether or not it's possible for men to actually be sexually abused. That's a myth out there.
Yes.
And so this talk was by a woman called Emily Leston, who's done a master's in coercive control, I think, at the University of Salford in Manchester, which is where Jill is connected. And she said that the focus on women's experience, which I think is absolutely right, and she says absolutely right that women get that space, has pushed aside and diminished the male experience. And it's hard for me to say that, but it's certainly what I've seen. And she talked about stereotypes, the hegemonic masculinity, not heard that word before, but basically it's a masculinity that's about dominance and power over in our culture that makes it hard for men to speak. This idea that women aren't violent and it's not possible for women to be violent, that men have insatiable sexuality and therefore can't be abused, and they're invulnerable and self-reliant. These ideas make it very hard for men to actually talk. And I personally, as a health practitioner with many male patients, I would like to hear those stories. And I know they're being told. So I really appreciated her bringing this to the fore. And so
that's a really difficult topic. And we know from the newspaper articles, again, in the Gloriavale situation, that there was significant boy on boy abuse that was occurring, older boy, younger boy, prolific, that had gone back generations. And yet, how many of them have we ever heard speak up in the public or the media? And yet we've heard a lot of women who were abused in Gloriavale speak up. And I know for a fact, just sitting in a lot of the discussions I have, it's a topic that the men remain a lot quieter on. The odd one here and there will put out a little bit of information that gives me a cue that they're letting me know that things happen to them, that they will not talk about it in the same way that their wives will. And I know one man was willing to put his name up in regards to some police charges that were laid against another man. Predominantly that man's charges were against women, but he said, I'm going to be the token male that enables my voice to be heard, I'm representing all the other men who have chosen not to participate in this court case.
Yeah. And I don't think it's safe. And
No.
I don't think there's a lot of gain. I've spoken to someone recently about this, and he said, why would we say anything? What is there to gain? And I know that makes my heart heavy. I know that there's very few men from Centrepoint boys, who have spoken out. I have 2 teenage boys, and the thought of them being in a cult and being forced, coerced, pressured, influenced to participate in sexual activity that they don't truly want to, that is a horrible, it's a gut-wrenching thought. And men in cults are sexually coerced in a different way, but it happens. And I think I welcome that conversation.
It's an incredibly important conversation, incredibly important. Yeah. So that abuse can almost be more hidden for me, but that it's absolutely there. Yeah, that's
like men. It's like they suffer the stigmatization of being abused. Perhaps they sense there's some embarrassment in it, that they weren't able to, say no, or that it occurred, the situation they were in made them look powerless, and a male might not want to feel that. I think inside some of these cults, there is often a male-dominated society where men actually have a sense of superiority, that they're in more control, and yet in an abusive situation a victim is never the one in control. So it would almost be like an admission that they weren't able to protect themselves.
Seen as like an emasculation kind of a thing. Yeah, that's really hard.
And it does happen in cults. Emasculation happens. Like that whole generation, even parents. We spoke in the last episode where, you spoke, Lindy, about a letter that was read out to all the congregants of the Exclusive Brethren churches recently, and it was the leaders asking the parents to do the job of passing on the message about social media to their children. So parents are always used as tools or weapons of advancing the goals of the group, and so you don't end up necessarily being your own autonomous male or female in that group. You imbibe the expectations of what the group wants you to do, so you find yourselves actually powerless, emasculated, unable to really fulfill your function as, say, a father in the way that you would otherwise have wanted to. And that involves protecting children.
And in fact, boys and men may attract more violence against them, and more because of their maleness, because males are often more powerful in the group. So I have been told about the experience of being more targeted for physical abuse as a teenage boy. And yet at the same time being shoved into, so in some way the group recognizing the strength of maleness, and therefore it's a threat. But at the same time being pushed into this position of subservience, submission, which flattens that off entirely. So it's
Yeah, that's really interesting. You've got me thinking. One of the big court cases coming up against a man in Gloria Vale is the violence that he inflicted on a bunch of boys who were working. So those boys are willing to put their hand up and to speak about being the victim of physical violence, brutal, attacks. But we haven't seen a willingness for various ones to speak up in the sphere of sexual violence.
So I would say I would put a call out to any of our listeners, any men who experience what they would consider to be a unique and different experience of harm in a group that they're in, that they feel that there's no space to discuss. I'm a health practitioner. I don't compare men's voices to women's voices and go, oh, no, you're a man, you can't talk because you haven't heard it from enough women. I don't think like that. I think the person in front of me, I want to hear their story. If I would like to hear your story. So reach out to me, info@cultchat.co.nz. I want to activate this conversation.
And are you talking about activating it in a private sphere first, and then
just me talking, and like I said, I've just told you some conversations that I've had, and I haven't shared anything about any individual. Yeah. So, you know, I'm a doctor. I know how to keep things private and confidential. So if you want to talk, I'm willing to listen. Okay, another talk that got a lot of interest was from Omar Saldana. He was talking about what fuels extreme pro-group behavior, and he talked about this idea of the devoted actor model. And he's basically saying, look, unethical and abusive behaviors is carried out by members of cults. They're not just victims of harm, they also become perpetrators. And he wanted to look at what are the factors that increase the likelihood of a person in a high control group acting out in a harmful way towards others, and what are people willing to do for the group, and what are the causes of the extreme behaviors. So this idea of the devoted actor model was people willing to make costly sacrifices to themselves and engage in extreme actions when they're fused with a group which upholds sacred values.
Wow.
Yeah. So the sacred values were deeply held, non-negotiable, acted out with complete conviction. That's what the sacred values were. And their extreme actions were irrational and personally costly behaviors. And he talked about this idea of fusion, where the self and the sacred values all just became one. And if you threatened the group or the self or the sacred values, you threatened all.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, and he using this to sort of explain extreme radical behaviors, but it can also explain non-violent behaviors. And I thought that was fabulous, because we do good with these things as well, right? You know, if you're a member of Greenpeace and you throw yourself in front of a bulldozer that is about to mow down an ancient culty, you know, sacred values, extreme behavior, confusion to the group. So yeah. So he did the study of 2,235 Spanish and English speakers, roughly the same gender, male, female. A third were religious and 2/3 weren't. And he used a scale, the willingness to die scale.
Oh, fascinating. Oh, I'm going to make a prediction here that the religious were more willing to die because they hold a sacred value that there is an afterlife. And so that...
And a reward in that afterlife.
Yeah, so that's just, there you go. Tell me.
Yes, well, they were asked not what they'd done, but what they would be willing to do, what they'd be willing to fight or die for, and what they'd be willing to tolerate abuse in others for.
How fascinating.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I
and
know.
It's not going to be over what their favorite color is. It's going to be over a sacredly or deeply held belief.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. So men were more willing to engage in extreme behaviors than women. Younger were more than older. Lower status in the group, more willing.
So that's an admission you're willing to climb up the group, and in doing so, perpetrate more harm on those underneath you in your desire to get the better end of the stick.
Who knows, or you seeing it all happen above you, and you've just been fully indoctrinated into this things here.
Because often people who are lower class in a group have actually suffered more harm and trauma as well by the group. And so in that way, maybe there's some attachment that's actually deeper than someone who has been less broken by the group.
No, do you remember your interview with Victory and is it Faithful? Hopeful?
Disciple?
He said we as children were far more zealot-like in our belief and our uptake of the values of Gloriavale than our parents were. I remember him saying, like, we were more we were zealots when they were
Yes.
more uncertain. And I was like, is
And
that
John Reddy. I was just talking to John Reddy recently, and he reminded me that he was impressed by Hopeful, and he watched how Hopeful did stuff and got stuff done, how he treated people, but how it got him what he wanted. And he said, and I looked at him and I modeled myself, and I thought, that's how you do it. And I thought, yeah, a young zealot looking to their leader, learning from the modeling, because he thought Hopeful gained something by
Mm.
this behavior.
And then, so looking at the different countries, US and the UK were more likely to be willing to die or inflict harm on others. And religious groups, yes, more likely. You got that one right. And now this was interesting. Upholding sacred values as a reason was more likely to provoke violence than protecting people in the group.
Fascinating. And
I
yet,
think
the basis of most and many religions is love, care, compassion, peace. Fascinating.
so. You're saying, in essence, you're saying the kind of the principles or the values ultimately had more power as a motivator than relationship or around like real bodies, real lives. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and that isn't that what we see with the parents who potentially don't step
Absolutely.
in and care for their kids when they should because the value is being
Yeah. That, oh my gosh, this is exactly right. I was just speaking with someone about because an ongoing thing, and this is going into very personal territory for me, but there's been an ongoing thing since leaving that I've had where people speak to me about my mother, who remains in the Brethren and who's enforced strict excommunication with me, and oftentimes people have said to me, I'm sure she loves you underneath. And it's always been a challenging thing to hear people say when, from my perspective, my mother, on the face of it, if you just look at practically the outworkings of what strict excommunication looks like, it feels very callous, very cold, very unloving, very uncompassionate, all that kind of thing. It's deeply wounded me the way my mother has strictly cut me off, and it's an ongoing source of grief for me. And so at times when people very well-meaning have said, I'm sure she loves you underneath, it can be quite challenging when people say that, because sometimes I've said to them, yes, mothers can love their children, but history and society, so many scenarios around us, not even just cult related, show us that at times there are other factors in parents' lives that mean they are not able to access or express love. Just because you pop a baby out doesn't mean there's going to be a direct correlation of love and a desire to nurture and care and protect. Like we're so much more complicated than that, and our environmental factors can override that biological drive to care for young that should be there. And the thing that I've often said to people is, I do think my mother does have some love and care for me, but that while she remains in the group, her commitment to Bruce Hales and to the Brethren, and her deep loyalty and commitment to those principles and values, are where her attachment lies. And that gets in the way of her being able to have loving care or express that to me. So that's very personally interesting for me to hear Kaz say that this person is kind of backing up essentially what I feel that I am living out, that exact thing, that the desire, the drive to meet those values, it comes at a cost of persons and relationship, but people in that position make that choice.
Yeah, exactly.
A bounded choice, but they still make a choice, and albeit within the confines of what is permitted thought inside the group. So what you're saying, Kaz, is cult members who are zealots and who are loyalists and who act that out are extremists.
Well, yeah, I guess so.
Is that what he said? Did he call them extremist, or what was his definition of an extremist?
Oh, gosh.
Checking your notes.
What are the causes of the extreme behavior? I don't think he ever said they're extremist, but he did talk about fusion. He talked about, was it him or someone else? Ooh. This idea of fusion with the group. Devoted actors were more likely to fight or die for the group or shared sacred values or tolerate abusive behaviors. And if used with a group and abusive, yeah, that's it. He was talking about fusion, like the more fused you are with a group, and he gave this sort of simple diagram, circle, this is me, this is the group. If they are overlapping entirely, then nothing else for you, Venn diagram, think of Venn diagram.
Yep.
If there's quite a lot of overlap with you and the group, great. If there's complete overlap with you and the group, you're very, very fused. So that's really risky.
Yes.
He said at the end, encourage critical reflection on violence, yes. Promote pro-social behaviours. If fused with the group and you have an abusive leader, that's a problem.
Yes.
So you can be
Because
fused
an abusive leader is always abusing power and using manipulation, and they can just suggest things, and you actually think it's your own idea, your own original thought, your own personal belief.
Yeah, so he wasn't saying so much that group fusion with a group was inherently dangerous, but he encouraged people to, like I've seen it in my life, some people who I'm in a social group with don't seem to have anything else in their life except for the ski club or the church or the crochet circle or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And, he's just saying, like, really encourage people to sort of find things outside.
Yeah, to not become, I mean, he uses the word fusion. I tend to use the word enmesh, but basically you're saying, don't let your life become enmeshed with any one group, right?
Yeah, support diffusion from the group is what he was.
Yeah.
So that's
what we're saying. I'm talking about that in the context at the moment of Gloriavale's school, that these children are being educated inside the confines of a sociologically and psychologically unsafe environment. Wouldn't it be great if they were forced to go off-site so that they could have some space and to be integrated and to start to interact with others in society, at least as one starting point for more safety?
You're just reminding me of what I know happened around, because Maria was in our last episode, right? And she was talking about the experience of growing up in the Children of God and these raids that happened in the 1990s. And they pulled these kids out, this is my simple understanding, and they encouraged them to have sort of time outside the group, like they went horse riding and did other stuff. And superficially it looked like exactly what you've just said, except that they weren't really having any opportunity to connect with real people and actually get that actual flow of ideas and relationships and stuff. So it can be a tokenist step, can't it?
Yes, and it takes time to develop critical thinking skills. I mean, this man is suggesting opportunities to reflect on violence, but when you're in a group and violence is around you and it's been normalized and modeled, then, I mean, we all know that people who are born in groups have difficulty with critical thinking skill development and reflection, full stop.
Yeah. So yeah, lots of really great stuff there.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So, Kaz, have you got another workshop that you went to that particularly jumped out at you?
You'll remember our buddy Andre Jackson.
Yes.
Yes.
Jehovah's Witnesses, we did Waking Up episodes with him. One of the most interesting talks I went to last year at ICSA. I've never forgotten it, the steps to waking up. If
you want to hear more from Andre Jackson, then listen to episodes 55, 56, and 57. He was so fabulous, we gave him 3 whole episodes. And I'm going to talk about what he talked about. And he's one brilliant guy. He has always got something he's bringing out that just holds a room. He talked about collective narcissism. And I think that's because the group that he was raised in doesn't have one leader. If we remember Dr. Janja Lalich's theory of bounded choice, it talks about a charismatic leader. What do you do if you're in a group that has no one leader, or the one leader was, 5 generations ago and now it's
Died.
died, and the leadership's been taken over by a quorum, like it. So he was talking about narcissism and how that works when the whole group is narcissistic. So he coined this phrase. It's so interesting. So many people were like
Oh, yeah.
really attending. Collective narcissism. This idea that it's not just an individual person, but the whole group actually holds the narcissistic worldview. And he talked about in 4 different defining qualities.
Can I hold you just there? So can we just remind our listeners of narcissism and what it is? It's basically that self-obsession, and cult leaders often express that. It's the all about me. It's really someone who has an inability to think outside, to draw on empathy. Perhaps they actually don't have much in the way of their own personal empathy, or they often don't. And so narcissistic behavior it's about self-absorption, and you will stomp all over other people and exploit them for your own means and ends. But often they could look like charismatic people who are able to draw in and keep people captivated and meet some of your needs, but on the other hand, they're damaging you as well. And I know in the context of Gloriavale, Hopeful Christian is an absolute classic malignant narcissist. And we always wondered why it appears there were so many other people in the group that appeared to be narcissistic, and could they possibly have been born with a hereditary nature, or have they learned this? And so perhaps, Kaz, you're going to tell us about collective narcissism and where that fits.
So he talked about 4 defining qualities: entitlement or exploitation, arrogance, apathy, and a need for admiration. And he says that basically the whole group ends up holding this.
Ooh,
so he looked,
empathy.
Apathy. We'll get to that.
Okay, good.
So entitlement and exploitation, he said the group has a special status and deserves special treatment.
Yes.
Yeah. You are able to exploit other groups as a result. That the flow of energy comes from the members to the leadership, but not really the other way around. And you're entitled to unquestioning obedience. So, yep.
In the case of Gloriavale, or even maybe the exclusive brethren, there's this belief of entitlement that you have some extra rights that other members of society don't have, that you could perhaps behave just a little outside of the law and the norm. So you have a really good view of yourself.
Well, I mean, if your doctrine basically says that you know something that the rest of humanity doesn't, and you've got a direct line to the creator of the universe, and then it does kind of automatically kind of say, well, we know better.
It does. Yeah. And here's a story for you. One of the leaders from Gloriavale petitioned the Indian government a decade or 2 ago to lower the marriage age of Indian men, so that the Gloriavale woman coming over here who went to the Indian community in Gloriavale could marry some younger Indian men. Like,
my gosh.
What's in your head that you think you can petition the Indian government to lower their marriage age so that a few women from New Zealand can marry your men? That was just an example of like narcissism on steroids. And he wasn't even the main leader. He's like the leader's sort of lapdog, the one that did all his dirty work. But he had taken on the characteristics of the narcissistic collective.
Yeah. So, and then he went on to talk about arrogance, that you're chosen by Jesus, that you're fulfilling a prophecy, you never ever apologize, and I like this, you're the center of the universal struggle.
Yes. And you have the solution to the problem.
Yes, and the leadership is necessary to interpret scripture. So there's such an arrogance there that we know everything. It really plays into the entitlement piece as well, and the exploitation piece. And the apathy one, which you said you weren't sure about, I think it comes down to the whole, well, we don't really care about, it's the
lack of empathy.
Yes, and what's it Lifton's criteria about people not existing?
Dispensation of existence.
Dispensing of existence. So we get to decide who lives and who dies.
Right.
Yes.
And
so
who matters and who doesn't and all that sort of thing.
Yes, exactly. So that is it absolute lack, he calls it apathy, a lack of concern for anyone who's not here in this group.
Right.
And that's the whole shunning piece, isn't it?
Yes.
A complete lack of humanity around the impact of mandated shunning. And we've talked about this before about funerals and grief, like really kind of really inhumane understanding of what it means to lose a loved one. Yeah. And like he talked about on the J Dubs, it's okay if you don't take blood products and die.
Yeah.
And then the final one being admiration.
Again, like that is a great point right there of values over persons or principles over persons. What you shared about earlier, that commitment to the principles is what an extremist behavior that matters more than people suffering abuse.
Willingness to die.
Yes.
That's actually an example in the Jehovah's Witness scene of the other workshop you just spoke about.
That's right. I do feel kind of quite connected, actually. And then, so the final one is admiration, the demand that the group is admired. In the J Dubs, he was saying that they repeatedly state that they are unique in that they're Bible-based, neutral, and pacifist. And he was like, that's not unique at all. They celebrate being persecuted. And I was reminded of Destiny Church and how that interview on that John Campbell did recently about Destiny Church, where there were clips from old what's his face,
Tamaki.
Yes, being on stage and kind of going, look at how we're getting all these YouTube hits from our activities out and storming the libraries, etc., etc. Look how we're being persecuted. Yeah, go us.
Persecuted.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in the Gloriavale sphere, they're still, even as of last week, standing there saying that, we're being persecuted and we're being, we're being challenged, and it was really just the us versus them rhetoric. And Gloriavale leaders like to say, oh, it's not persecution, it's prosecution. There's a difference. You can be persecuted for your faith, or you can be prosecuted for your actions. That's actually what's happening.
He was arguing that actually there's some enjoyment of the persecution. It's not just poor me, but look at me. Look at us. Here we are, like fulfilling the struggle universally, and we're being persecuted for it. We're God's army. Like we're.
Idea. I've been thinking about some people in Gloriavale, and I believe they love the conflict. They love the fight. They love the challenge. They are thriving on it. I think there are people just sitting there soaking up the excitement, because I think their lives in Gloriavale are, a little mundane and less than exciting even presently, but they're absolutely thriving on the challenge of all these court cases coming at them, and really interesting.
So there's collectivized narcissism for you. And I think I got some feedback about our little vlog on this from someone who is advocate around the 2x2s, and they said this is perfect. This explains it perfectly. What I was like, 2x2s, they don't really have clear leadership. They don't have that strong.
Not anymore.
That strong,
because their leader died, who would have held those tendencies, 100 and whatever many years ago. You talked about the vlog there, and so Kaz is referring to the clips that her and Maria Esquera did while they were at the ICSA conference in Montreal just recently, and so you can find those on our Facebook page, Cult Chat, and our new Insta profile, and more than 25,000 people have gone and watched some of those vlogs over the last week or two. And Kaz says that's because we've got friends in high places. So I understand, you did one on collective narcissism. I listened to it and I was just captivated by the concept and shared it on the Gloriavale Leavers page as well. And I know that, that rings so true and helps explain a lot of behaviours from cults.
Yeah, so we've run out of time, haven't we?
Well, I think, that might be time for a wrap up. Anything last thoughts there, Lindy?
No, I'm just looking forward to going to an ICSA conference one day, but also really grateful that so much of their resources are available on their website. So I encourage your viewers and listeners to check them out as well, because there's just, yeah, so many, they're connected to so many people who have done and are doing such phenomenal research in all these areas, which is such a gift.
Well, I have to say, doing background work for Cult Chat while I was there and kind of tapping people on the shoulder and going, oh, would you like to come on the show? And I think I've got at least 10 probably yeses from some of the people we've actually talked about. And as well as that, Anke Richter, friend of the show, Anke Richter, who is behind the powerhouse behind the Decult conference that we all attended last year and spoke at. She was definitely going around.
So Anke was there tapping people as well. Let's have you, because it's good to have international voices here in New Zealand, because cultic activity has the same characteristics regardless of what country you're in. That's because cults and cult leaders draw on common social psychology techniques, and we have group behaviours. Just our shared humanity means that humans behave in certain ways. Kaz, did they make an announcement where next year's ICSA conference will be held?
No, they didn't. They said we haven't figured it out yet, but usually they go America, Europe. So I'm thinking it will be in Europe somewhere. But
where would be, what would be worth saving up for a conference in Greece, perhaps, or Italy?
Italy would be
Gosh,
nice.
what could we hope for?
Yeah, well, my final thought on all this is how much healthy spirituality was mentioned.
Right.
In the talks. Like basically repeatedly over and over again in different talks, speakers identified the gap in the area of healthy spirituality that people often, not always, but often are seeking something that's missing in their life. And if there's never any space to talk about spiritual needs in our health system, in our social systems, then people are more at risk of going to a group who is willing to talk about it and make it okay to talk about spirituality. So I thought, interesting, there's a gap in our society in New Zealand where we don't make it okay, just be okay with spirituality. And the second thing was the number of people who said and there was one person in particular who said this, Heidi Hewitt, she might come on the show, talked about how if you found value in spirituality prior or during the trauma of being in such a group, then it's really critical to heal that part of yourself after. So we can't just ignore spirituality. It has consequences for our society.
Yeah, I know a lot of those leaving Gloriavale have found it's been important for them to find an expression of their Christian faith. They've accepted they've had to turn almost everything they learn on its head and examine it, but it has helped them tremendously undo the trauma. Instead of burying it, they've actually had to face it and work through it, which has been part of their healing journey. But it's a deeply personal decision to make, and you can only do it when you feel you have a place you can do that safely. And not everyone, as you say, feels like they can or want to.
And that healing might be a considerable morph from what it was to what it will become. But it's still healing your spirituality.
Yeah,
brushing it aside and dismissing it is not healing it.
Yeah, and I think, Kaz, I mean, this could be a whole nother podcast another day, but I'd been doing some reading in kind of the areas of professional counselling here in New Zealand earlier this year, and I was really loving and appreciating that in New Zealand anyway, the rich gifts that we've received from engaging more the Māori worldview has been a real emphasis on including spirituality as part of our hauora or our well-being in a way that traditionally often counselling or psychotherapy, that kind of thing, has been more secular or more wanting to relegate religion to not being relevant to that discourse. But I think here in New Zealand in particular, that has been a real gift that the Māori worldview has been, calling us back in a way, despite, a lot of society being so-called secular, calling back even those so-called secular spaces to say, no, spirituality is inherently human. And that if we're going to talk about what well-being looks like, or healing, especially psychological and mental and emotional healing, we need to talk about people's spirituality. And it's not a separate conversation or something for only priests or pastors to deal with, that it's something that all health professionals, including doctors and that kind of thing, need to be welcoming this topic into the room instead of leaving it to so-called religious spaces. And so that's
unsafe wellness industry practitioners.
Exactly. Yeah. We need to normalize the fact that it is such a part of, for so many people, it is a part of their life. And it might not look like traditional spirituality or going to a certain worship space on a certain day of the week, but it's part of so many people. It's part of their well-being, and to normalize talking about it. That's wonderful to hear that they were beating on that drum at ICSA. Yeah, well, what a great conversation, guys. I've really appreciated this. Wow. Wish I had been there.
Well, Lindy, let's see what happens in the year to come. Perhaps we might find ourselves one day, all three of us.
How good would that be?
That would be amazing. Let's hope for that. Well, everyone, thanks for joining us again. Thanks, Kaz, for sharing the highlights of the ICSA conference with us. And we thank Maria, who joined us for part 1 of the episode, as well. Her contributions to our show incredible, really. And so we invite you all to come back again to keep listening to Cult Chat. Follow us on our various platforms, including our new Insta page. We're growing up. And thanks to Plains Media for all their support of our show. Catch you again another day. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
See you later. If anything in today's episode was difficult or upsetting for you and you would like to talk to somebody, we encourage our New Zealand listeners to free call or text 1737 for support from a trained counsellor. Or you might like to visit the resources section of the Olive Leaf Network website, where you can find a range of organisations and resources that might be able to support you. We would also like to remind you that the views and thoughts and opinions that have been expressed in this program are the speakers alone, and Cult Chat does not necessarily endorse or share them.